Hey, it's Jill. Real quick, before we start the episode, we need your help. We want to learn more about what you want from us. So if you would please check out our website at thefire.com, go to the listener page and take our survey. We'd really appreciate the feedback. We'll also announce one lucky survey taker in our February episode to win a pretty sweet At the Fire box. So take the survey later. Now sit back and enjoy the episode.
I don't know if I'd want to go to a cemetery with you.
Why?
You've shared a lot of stories. Like, there's a lot of weird things that kind of happen in your presence. Do you think there's something that kind of attracts all of that to you?
No, I think I'm just an outgoing person in general. Maybe ghosts just really want to hang.
It's just your charisma. Well, I guess you're not alone. A huge number of people, a significant portion of the population. I'm not sure what the figure is, but there's a statistic out there.
I want to say I've never been with a group of people where at least one person didn't have a good ghost story.
Yeah, that's fair. And if you go on Reddit, there's a ton of them.
Yeah, and tonight we're actually going to be sharing a ghost story from user No Cats on Melmac. We're also going to have our guest storyteller on who loves cats. You'll hear all about that when Corinne joins us later on in the episode.
Yes, it's all ghosts tonight, people.
Because tonight it's spirits, specters, and ghosts. Oh my!
Part 2, Ghosts for Real.
For real.
That's right, people. Our first true story tonight comes from our very own Jill and her experience inside a haunted apartment while she was in college.
Yes. The time I tried to live alone and unknowingly moved in with a roommate. So, in college, admittedly, I was the girl who bounced around to a new living situation every semester. It just seemed to happen. I'd always have some type of falling out with a roommate or a friend, and admittedly, I am the common denominator there. But long story short, I ended up moving to my own place mid-lease during my sophomore year of college. I actually loved the apartment. It was huge. Much more space than I needed to live on my own. It was really nice not to have any roommates. But my boyfriend at the time was working 2 jobs and going to school full time, so he wasn't around that much. Thankfully, my best friend and his brother actually lived in the building next to mine, so I didn't ever really feel like I was alone. I remember one night, it was maybe 11 o'clock midnight. I just gotten home from hanging out with some of my friends, and my boyfriend was getting out of work around 3. So I was getting kind of hungry. I pulled out a box of those frozen pierogies from the freezer, and I started heating up a pan and threw some oil in it. I waited for the pan to heat up. I walked into my bedroom to grab my laptop to look for something to watch on Netflix. And I think I actually decided on watching I Know What You Did Last Summer, which is kind of funny looking back. So as I was in my bedroom, I heard 2 smacks coming from the kitchen, and my first thought was, oh darn, the oil's popping. I heated the pan up too high, and so I kind of rushed back into the kitchen, but everything was fine, only the pierogi box had flown across the room and hit the wall parallel to it, and had fallen to the floor. And I kind of just chalked it up to maybe there was a draft in the apartment, but then more and more strange things started to happen. I started to think that maybe there was more to what was going on, when I would notice some of my belongings out of place. I had some guinea pigs at the time, and I had little stockings for them that I hung up on the wall. I taped them to the wall. It sounds super janky and didn't really fit my decor style, but that's what I did. So I taped them to the wall, and I came back one day from class, and one of the stockings had been lifted up, turned the other way, and retaped back down to the wall. There was no way that the wind would have blown it with the way that I had taped it. Somebody had to have physically picked it up, moved it, and retaped it. And unless, my landlord is just sick and twisted and likes to mess with people, or an old tenant maybe still has a working key, I can't really give another explanation for that. So my boyfriend had given me this beautiful orchid for Valentine's Day that year, kind of to go with my floral decorations in the apartment. And I had loved it, and I cared for it, and I knew how hard it was to keep one of these beautiful plants alive. So I made sure that I followed the instructions for caring for one of the plants to a T. So I was super surprised one day when I had came home and I had noticed that all of the orchid petals were plucked off of the flower and kind of laying on the floor and scattered on the shelf it was sitting on. I can only really recall feeling threatened one time in the apartment, and it was a night when I was home by myself. My boyfriend was still working his shift until 3 a.m., and I just got this overwhelming sense that I wasn't alone, and I just really didn't want to be there by myself anymore. My friend who lived the building over was out of town for some reason, but his brother was there, and I shot him a text, and he agreed to come over to the apartment and hang out with me until my boyfriend got out of work. So we were sitting on the couch watching TV, and I had started talking about how I just felt a little uneasy at the apartment by myself. And I remember my friend's brother was just asking me, like, hey, please don't talk about it. Like, that's going to make the activity worse. Can we just not even mention it? And then my bedroom door slammed shut. And the force behind it was more force than I think I could ever recreate. It was not possible for how hard this door was slammed shut. And my friend's brother literally said, I'm out, and left, and I was there alone for a couple of hours. It was great. Thankfully, my boyfriend headed over shortly when he was out of work, and I kind of told him everything that had happened. So in order to calm me down, we just sat in my bedroom on top of my bed with all the lights on, and we just started looking for some type of uplifting movie or TV show to watch on Netflix. So I'm going to pause here, and I want to go back to how I decorated my apartment so tastefully. I had outfitted my bedroom with those beautiful Chinese lanterns, and they just kind of dangled from my ceiling above my bed at all different heights. It was just so super cute. When my boyfriend and I were sitting on the bed underneath the Chinese lanterns, all of a sudden we started to hear the floorboards over by my closet start to creak, like somebody was standing on them. And then we looked at each other, and we were really quiet, and we started listening, and we could slowly hear each floorboard that led up to my bed creaking, as if somebody was approaching, the area that we were sitting. And as each floorboard creaked, one by one, the Chinese lanterns dangling from above our heads started to spin. and we looked at each other, and I grabbed my little ghost meter that I have, because of course I have a ghost meter, and I pointed at the closet, and it just peaked. It was going crazy. I had really never ever gotten a reading like that before, unless I pointed it directly at an electrical outlet. So he just kind of grabbed our stuff and hightailed it over to his place, and I don't think we ever spent the night at my apartment again. We tried to find if anybody had maybe died in that complex, or maybe even the apartment that I was living in, but we never found anything. We didn't even find anything about deaths near the intersection the apartment was on. I ended up living in that apartment for almost 2 full years. The opportunity came up to live with a really awesome friend, so I never really felt like I was pushed out of the apartment, but I was excited to have a human roommate again and see how that worked out. And it did, and I kind of missed the ghosts a little bit. It added some excitement to my life, but I just can't help but think I can't believe that my most successful roommate situation in college was with a ghost.
So, be straight with me. Did you practice the occult at all as a child?
No, why would you even ask that?
That sounds like the response of somebody who's lying.
No, I did not practice the occult as a child.
Okay.
What is wrong with you?
Well, because Gettysburg and now this, and I don't know, but I think it is interesting in the middle of a semester, like you said, you hadn't been at your current place that long before you moved into this new place.
Right.
And it was sort of, you know, I remember being in college, you know, and it's at a certain point throughout the season, it's very difficult to find an apartment like near campus, a nice place to stay. So
Right.
that there was a place too big for you, you said, available.
2
Something
bedrooms.
had to be up, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Somebody had moved out of there
It's kind of weird.
mid-semester. Maybe they couldn't handle having another roommate.
Maybe they died.
Maybe they died. I'm pretty sure that they would have had to disclose that to me.
Yeah, I don't know. I never understood that law. Like, you always hear that anecdotally, and we're actually going to talk to somebody later who lived in a house where the previous owner had died.
I'm choosing to believe that the previous tenant did not die, and maybe it was just
Probably not.
I feel like that would have been
Yeah, I've always
front
had...
page news. It was student housing.
I think I've said it before. We did an entire episode about place in this city, Mount Pleasant, Michigan. There's, I don't know, something about that place, that land, the sunsets.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
I think geographically there are certain spots on the planet. Maybe I sound like a psycho here.
you don't.
Where activity and, you know, maybe the laws of physics don't apply in ways that we'd conventionally think of them.
Yeah, Mount Pleasant is a very special place. It's very rich in history, so there are quite a few possibilities. I've had just a ton of weird experiences, not just where I lived, but you know, indirectly I've had some weird experiences from just some buildings on campus, which I'm sure we'll get into in a later episode.
Yeah, there's a plug for Central Michigan University. It's fucking haunted.
But super beautiful and a great school. Fire up chips.
Yeah.
So like Ben said, a lot of different people have ghost stories out there, and we're super lucky and excited to have one of our great friends, Corinne, join us at the fire to share about her experience growing up in a haunted house.
I definitely believe that there is an afterlife and that spirits kind of do live among us. I've never had too much experience with negative ones, so like the kind of like scary movies stuff like freaks me out, but I kind of like laugh at it a little bit. But I definitely believe that it exists, and I hope in the future that maybe I'll get to come back as a cat. As a kid, I really enjoyed hanging out with my cats, and he was actually a big part of, the paranormal stuff that we saw in our house. I enjoyed playing outside, and I still do. It's kind of weird because it happened as a child, so like the fact that I still believe in it, maybe, some people would think is weird, but the activity was so like mundane and just part of my life and childhood that it definitely made me feel like it really does exist. Yeah, it was over 100 years old when I believe my parents bought it in, 1987 when my sister was like a year old. And so that was already kind of bizarre because it was super old and had one of those creepy basements. It's like you walk down the stairs and you're just immediately kind of frightened. And yeah, just like really bizarre. And it wasn't like anything negative from the kind of ghost experiences that we had, but it was just kind of a creepy house and, very homey to me. But I think other people might feel differently about it. And it had like a bunch of owners, and I know that the previous owner, like when my parents got the house, had died actually in one of the rooms in a tiny like little bathroom that used to be in the downstairs area that actually didn't exist when we, owned that house and lived there. There used to be a bathroom in my like high school bedroom, so it was like a really small room, but this is maybe like a myth, I'm not entirely sure if it's true, but the first like floor there was a bedroom, and there used to be a bathroom in the closet, and that was where like the old woman was found dead, and she was like super old, so it wasn't super surprising, but so it was always kind of unnerving. Like once I moved down to that bedroom, like we didn't know the old woman's name, like I don't think my parents ever knew it or told us, so did this actually happen? I don't know. So I think it was possibly like right after I was born. The laundry room, or like where we had the laundry, was in the basement, and my mom was down there with her, favorite child of all, which was the cat. But they were downstairs, and my mom like kind of got, how you kind of get that experience of like feeling something chilly and cold, and she like kind of felt uneasy and startled, and she turned around and saw a shadow, and like the cat was just like, all freaked out and like skidded around, like something was happening, and he saw the shadow as well. So like, how you kind of question, you're like, really, did I see that? And my mom definitely felt like she was assured that she did, since the cat saw it as well. And that was the first event that definitely happened that I heard about from my parents. I was lucky enough, like most of my experiences were not that frightening. My mom feels as though the ghost kind of showed up, or the spirit showed up in our house kind of as a protector of both my sister and I. And it kind of makes sense if she showed up like after I was born. I don't know, I always had this weird sensation of someone putting me to bed at night. She'd be tucking me in at night almost. I'd get kind of chilly and kind of like pressure on my body in a sense, like not like I was being suffocated or anything like that, but almost like, when you tuck around someone that you're putting to bed, like especially a child, you kind of tuck their covers in and it's cute and whatever. That's kind of the sensation I would get. It would last quite a long time too. It would be like 10 minutes or so. It felt like every night she would come in and say goodnight. And I've even asked my sister about it because we used to share a room. and she, definitely always heard the doorknobs turning and, could feel the presence as well. It's such a like contradiction in my opinion. It's like you're kind of like scaring us, but you're doing something nice. Like I don't know how to feel. It wasn't threatening at all, but it was just weird. And at sometimes it was just like, I just don't want to be weirded out anymore. Like, just come on. And I noticed that she did subside from that once I got quite a bit older. That's kind of one of the beauties of the kind of hauntings that we all experience, is that unknown. Like, when they're not so simple and like, oh yeah, it's my grandfather and everything like that, it really becomes this exciting like kind of forensic case of why. And then you never figure it out, obviously, because like, I don't know, I've never been able to communicate with the dead. I feel like it would make more sense if it was like a grandparent or something, like, but this woman had no relation to us other than that house. Maybe she didn't have grandkids of her own. We've gone down that entire road of like, why? Because definitely it wasn't just me and my mom that really thought that there was a spirit living among us. It was also my father and my sister. We actually sold it about 10 years ago or so. And I'm kind of curious if, I think it's just like a single man that bought the property, but maybe now he has a family. It's been 10 years. And I wonder if she's present. But maybe she just liked my family a lot and she bailed when we left. So you never know.
So I can absolutely verify this story. I have spent many nights at the original Corinne house, childhood house.
I have been inside. I recall being inside, but I think it was 1 or 2 times.
It's old. It's so old and it's so creepy. And I just remember one night, we were having a sleepover in the bedroom that she talked about in her story. And she like insisted on sleeping on the floor and let me have her bed, and I'm like, no, I'll sleep on the floor. And the only space is the space between the bed and the closet. It wasn't a huge room, but there was enough room, to sleep on the floor there.
And the closet is where this bathroom was.
Right. So the closet used to be a bathroom, and I think it may have lined up with the bathroom upstairs.
That's super
so it makes
weird.
sense. Yeah. Anyway, I remember just feeling like warm and homey, and I felt kind of like a tingly pressure one night, and I asked her about it, and she told me the story.
Whoa, that's wicked.
Yeah, I guess the ghost was very loving.
Yeah, and it sounds like every member in her family had different encounters, different experiences, sort of isolated from everyone else in the family, which is
made it
also
very personal.
pretty compelling. Yeah.
So we know that Corinne's story is not the only story about growing up with a ghost.
Yeah, another really spooky story about a childhood bedroom with a possible ghost inside.
Yeah, here is one Redditor's recount of sleeping next to their creepy crawl space as a kid.
When I was younger, probably from 11 to 13 years old, there was a small door that led to a crawl space in my bedroom. It was an actual door, just smaller, 2 feet by 4 feet, with a knob that has to be turned to get it open. It became a habit that I would shut the door as soon as I walked into my bedroom a couple times a week. I didn't think anything of it, but just assumed my mom didn't close it all the way when she left. After a while, I made the mistake of joking with her when she made a comment about me not picking up after myself. I said something smart like, "Every night I have to close the door in the attic behind you. How about you shut it all the way when you're done?" She kind of paused and informed me that she hadn't been in the attic in months. When I asked my brother, nothing. He hadn't been in there either. Asked my father, he said the same thing. After that, I started to pay really close attention to it. Making sure it was closed in the morning, checking it after school, checking it after dinner. Then I head up to bed, and it's open. After a couple months of wondering, studying, experimenting, I thought I'd see what happens if I just don't shut it. I opened the door before school and checked it as soon as I got home. Open. I checked it after dinner. Still open. Before bed, the door stayed open. Now I'm laying in bed, my mind's going crazy with the open door across the room. I decide to check it out. So I roll over and focus in on the black space leading into the attic. Just faintly, in the darkness, there was a face staring back at me. It was expressionless. I didn't see a body, just what appeared to be a dimly lit face looking back at me. I bolt downstairs, wake up my parents, get ridiculed by my brother, eventually switch bedrooms with him, and we move into a new house about 6 months later due to our expanding family. A new physics teacher in town and his wife ended up buying the house. I could have forgotten all about it and chalked it up to an overactive mind. But then my senior year, I discovered how awesome our physics teacher was. He became my favorite class and by far my favorite teacher. Near the end of the year, my friend and I took my family's VHS camcorder around town, mostly filming anything, but then we took it to my old house to see what they had done with the place. We got a very fun tour, and I got to tell stories all about the fun projects my dad did that were still a part of the house. Then the wife leads us upstairs to show us the sewing room. My old bedroom. I asked, kind of jokingly, "Notice anything strange in this room?" And her face goes blank. On camera, she asks what I mean, and I try to shrug it off, but I end up saying something about the attic door. She confirmed that every time she comes up to sew, the door's open. She tells us that the second day of being in the house, their dog had gone into the room, but wouldn't go back downstairs. He started barking and they couldn't make him stop. He ended up jumping out a window and landed on the tin roof over the porch, and ran off. The dog didn't come back until the next day, and hasn't gone near the hallway leading upstairs since. I had the initial thought that I could show my parents and my brother the story I had on film, but I decided to just let it be. The event itself was easy to shrug off, because I could chalk it up to a lot of other possibilities. Wind, air pressure changing. It wasn't until 5 years later that it became freaky. The look on the wife's face before she told us about the dog was very telling. It's like it was something they just never put much thought into. But my story added depth to their experience, and their story added depth to mine. This didn't make me a believer in the paranormal. I'm telling this story mostly as a collection of details and not as a confirmation of the existence of ghosts. What it did do was make sure I'll never be a non-believer.
So, do you think that there really was a ghost? Do you think
No,
the face
man.
was the imagination?
The first thing I thought, so okay, I'll say, I don't know. This is ghost for real. I don't know. That could be a ghost for real. I don't know. But my first thought when I heard that story, read that story, there's fucking somebody living in your crawl space, man.
Don't even joke about that. That is like the scariest thought that runs through my head late at night every time I hear like just a noise coming from the other room.
It's terrifying to think about. Like, yeah, anytime you move into a new place, you think you've checked every nook and cranny, but
you don't know.
I mean, man, especially if you have a house. Don't know.
Oh, I'm never gonna buy a house. It's condos for me.
Right, and then people buy these, thousands of square foot homes with rooms they go in maybe annually.
Like, how do you know there's not some homeless person hanging out in the closet of your guest room?
I mean, I guess
never
if
used?
if your house is that big, who cares if there's a hobo in the east wing?
I want to give a quick shout out to Phoebe Judge and the podcast Criminal. They actually have an episode that explores that very subject, and it kept me up all night long. It is so scary.
Kept me up too.
So we hope you enjoyed this episode. We're always up for more ghost stories. Let us know what creepy encounters you've had, and where should we do our next on-site episode? Did you like Pierre Cheney? Do you want us to go to more creepy cemeteries and haunted graveyards? Let us know.
Yeah, even if you have encounters with something more fleshy and creepy, like stranger danger, tell us about those too.
Yeah, hit our website up at thefire.com to submit your story. And rate and review us on your favorite podcast streaming site because we're on all of them.
Yep, we'd love to hear from you. As always, my name is Ben.
And this is Jill.
Have a good night.
Good night.